Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back to the World Class Waffle podcast. This week we come to you with episode 12. I almost said 11 then, but 12. We come to you for episode 12 of the World Class Waffle podcast, and this week it's probably going to be a shorter episode because we're going to be reacting to the announcement that came out yesterday, but probably 2 days before when you're listening to this, of the government's announcement of the roadmap out of lockdown and the plans for the future. It's ambitious, but I'd say possible. And I think they've probably done the right thing here, the government, with the plans. It's who knows how it's going to work, whether it's going to be pushed back or not, whether it's going to, I don't know, whether the vaccine's going to work and whether it's going to transmit further. Who knows? It's too early to tell, but the end is in sight. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, for the first time in a while, the end is in sight. That's the key thing.
I'd say the temporary end is in sight because we're gonna. If this vaccine is the key to this having a normal life again, we're gonna have to stay vaccinated for the rest of the time.
Yeah, well, I say you've got this. So it'll basically just become another flu, effectively, a slightly worse flu because everybody's going to have to get up to date with it. It's not going to go away, as the government keeps saying. It's not going to go away completely, but we can live with it because the flu kills 20,000 people a year, so we live with that as if it's a normal thing. So it'll be like that. Unfortunately, people will still lose their lives to it down the line, but it's not going to be as bad.
Professor Chris Whitty said that it's going to be with us pretty much every winter for the next couple of years. And I think that's understandable, really. But we should be better prepared for it now, and the vaccine can be altered to combat any new variants that there may be, because if those that aren't vaccinated are spreading the virus, then it's going to mutate even further, and then the vaccine may not work against those strains, and then that puts more people at risk.
Yeah, all of this will be for nothing.
We'll have to see how it goes. Yeah,
we will see how it goes.
Obviously,
but the government have introduced their 4-step plan to coming out of lockdown, and it's released in various stages. I think it's it's every 5 weeks they're looking to release more of society and try and get more of society opened up. We're going to be discussing how this is going to affect uni students, as is the case in our case, and what it means for the future, and are we going to have to live with different traditions down the line, and will society be changing? Who knows? It's too early to tell. But let's start with stage 1, which is, I believe, schools reopening.
Schools reopening from the 8th of March, amongst other things, obviously.
This is arguably the most important one, as the government have been saying for the past 6 weeks that we've been in this bloody lockdown. It's the most important for a reason, because it's getting our children into the world of work, getting them their education, and getting them the next generation educated enough so that when we're out of this virus, they'll be in line to get jobs and stuff. But there's a lot of speculation about schools, because students are going to have to be tested twice a week, and that's a logistical nightmare, especially with secondary school children, because they're just going to say, yes, I'm negative, no can do, I'm going to school anyway, and they're going to end up spreading the virus. That's a logistical nightmare, because they're never going to be able to trust secondary school students to test themselves, because that's what they're doing. They're making them send testing kits home to test them at home. That's never going to work, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't. I think, like we've mentioned many times before, unfortunately, our age group and slightly younger than our age group tend to be the ones who statistically break the rules the most often. So to trust them to test themselves at home regularly and abide by all these extra rules. Obviously, secondary school students will also be required to wear face masks in lessons as well.
Yeah.
So to trust them to follow those rules with no complications is probably going to be quite low. But I think this is the school's going to open, like you say, it's the most important thing to happen. But I think it is potentially the hardest obstacle it's like trying to. I mean, I was going to say it's like hurdles, but they're all the same height. But imagine if hurdles got harder as you went. It's like trying to jump the highest one for the highest thing first.
I think the
Because this
essential
is where
key
it could all
word
go
here.
wrong.
I think the essential key word here is trust. They've got to be able to
Yeah.
trust the students to test themselves, be honest with their testing, and make sure they're submitting it to the schools so they can keep safe and keep classrooms open. Because that's the priority. The rest of society doesn't really matter. But as long as you've got schools and universities open, that's the priority. But we still don't know what's happening with universities, really. They've mentioned absolutely sod all about it, as per usual.
Yeah, Harry said earlier that the university put an email out basically stating we don't know what we're doing yet.
Yeah, but so we have to give them time to make their mind up. Obviously, I do feel for universities because they are operating in the same time frame as us. Like they found out about the roadmap at the same time we did.
Well,
so
they've
have time to make decisions about it.
They've got like a week or so to develop a plan, and then obviously if the government issues, because apparently I've read some students will be allowed to return.
Yeah,
I mean that's what you
there is mixed messages about who can return, because
that's what you boys wanted to do. You stated that in previous episodes, but then the case is, I'm going to put a question to you guys now. Do you really want to return if online learning remains in place for university? Because I know in certain courses they're not bringing face-to-face back. It's only if it's necessary and mandatory. So in your case, if there's no online learning, would you want to come back anyway?
If they can guarantee an increase in face-to-face teaching, which is what they're trying to do for practical courses, then yes, I would return. And if the opportunity arises for us to return, I would take the opportunity and return, because I can focus better at university. I feel like I've got more opportunities around me, and I'll be able to just focus better. And it's hard at home for sure. And I want to be able to get back onto campus and continue. Well, I say continue, pretty much start face-to-face teaching.
Would you return if it's online learning still?
So I don't think that choice will be made for us, to be honest. I think the way staffs, obviously, we can only speak for staffs because that's where we all are. But I think the way, from what I've gathered from the email they sent out the other day about how they're sorting it out, is I think it will be the fact that if courses that are still going to remain online, I think the students will probably be requested to still stay at home because they're travelling up essentially for no reason.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Would you return if it was online learning?
Well,
because like with Ben's case, he needs to focus on that. Like he want to come back. Sorry,
it's a different case for me and Rob, really, because Rob's a lot further away from Stoke than I am. It's fairly simple for me to get a train up to Stoke to continue face-to-face teaching, because I'm only in Leicester, and it's only an hour and a half on the train. Whereas for Rob, he's got to trail all the way into London and then back up to Stoke. I mean, he doesn't really want to be doing that unless it's certain that there's going to be a guaranteed face-to-face teaching. That's the problem.
I think I'd say I'm not really sure in what decision I'd make, but I don't think it's going to be left with me to make the decision. I think I will, if the case happens for our course where they say, look, you're not. Obviously, what we haven't mentioned is they've deemed that practical learning can resume from the 8th of March. So now universities are currently deciding what they class as practical and what they don't in terms of who can have face-to-face. So if our course is deemed as not being practical enough, then I think we will then be said that we can't guarantee you'll get face-to-face. So can you please stay at home because it avoids you coming up here and potentially spreading the virus around if you have it.
I mean, essentially, you would class journalism as a practical course because you've got to go out, get your stories, and interviews and stuff. That's very practical based. But is it the most practical element in terms of university courses? That's up to the university officials to tell. Because, in my opinion, I think journalism is a practical course, and we need to use studios and stuff to be able to further our learning. Because so far, we haven't had any practical experience really in our first year, and that's not going to set us up well for our further career.
No, I get what you mean, and
so that's a problem at the moment.
I also understand what you mean, Ben, about having to like be away and not be distracted. Hence why I came back before lockdown, because I knew that if I was at home, I wouldn't get anything done. I'd be more focused up here. So I totally agree with and understand from where you're coming from with that.
I think that's probably, like I said earlier, I feel for universities because obviously the government have announced this roadmap on Monday, and students are going to want answers on Monday as well. But obviously they don't know what, they don't get told in advance, so they now have like probably this week or so to get themselves together and get an announcement out there straight away. Because obviously naturally we're going to want answers. Like I'd love it if the university turned around 5 minutes after Boris's announcement and said, "Look, this is what's happening. This is what we want you to do."
Oh yeah,
but
come
they
back.
can't do that, which obviously. Like, obviously, again, we can only speak for ourselves, but we got an email from somebody at the university within an hour or so of the briefing yesterday saying that, head of department, within an hour or so saying, look, we're going to have meetings during the week this week and we'll let you know as soon as we can. Obviously, I can't speak for confidently, but I'd assume other universities will have done that as well. And then hopefully by the time this podcast comes out and people will be listening to it, they might have had some more information. Yeah, but I do feel for people on courses. I was saying to Ben, maths courses, English courses, even things like law and that, they're not overly practical. They can easily be done online. So I feel for them because I feel like they may be requested to still stay at home, whereas we're kind of optimistic about it because we would consider journalism as a practical thing. But I think I'm near doing a maths degree. We wonder, well, what's going to happen here then?
I mean, there is some positives to being at home, I guess, and it's securing interviews that I certainly wouldn't have been able to secure while I was on campus. I mean, I've managed to secure an interview that, let's face it, I'd have had no chance doing if I was on campus, because it allows you to broaden your horizons and get your contacts further afield that wouldn't exactly be possible out on campus today, because the interview I've managed to secure is I'm very happy with, and it's something that I've had to really stretch out for, and that wouldn't be possible at the minute if I was on campus. So that's the only positive to really being away from campus and on a screen as we are at the minute. But we need the practical element, and whether we'll get that come March the 8th, we just don't know yet, but we should find out in the next, week or so.
Yeah, this is a huge week for universities across the UK with making the right decision and what's best for students. They need to put the students at heart and make them and put them first. And they need to really think about what's the best plan of going forward for the rest of the year.
Many people thought that originally it would be just healthcare students, but let's remember healthcare students already went back at the start of lockdown. So what does the next strand of practical learning mean? Who are the next people to be targeted for practical learning? Is it journalism students? I don't know. Is it drama students? Who knows?
Film and media, you can put that in that.
It's up for the university to decide that. And they've got essentially a week to do it, because they've got to give people a week to be able to prepare if they have to return.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, obviously, so I do feel for them because they've not just got banned on stack, and there's obviously all these other things in the coming weeks after that, because obviously the schools won't have to deal with things like when organised sport is allowed back on the 29th of March. University then have their teams. So they got to sort fixtures out. They have their clubs and societies and those sort of things. Do they start them up this year, or do they save that till September? They've got a lot on their plate, and obviously, like I said, students are going to, naturally, we're going to want answers as soon as we can possibly get them. But I do feel for them how much they're going to have to manage over the coming weeks as we slowly ease our way out of lockdown.
Yeah, let's move on to step 2, which is the opening up of outdoor facilities, for example, and outdoor grassroots sport. What does this mean that, for example, non-league football is returning? I think essentially that is what it means, and adult and kids sport can resume, which it's big for health reasons, but it's not the most important thing in society.
No.
But it's the only thing that can really open up at this time, because April the 12th is when they want the next phase to be opened up. We'll go into that in more detail in a moment, but from the 29th of March, they want grassroots sports to be restarted. I think something about the rule of 6 possibly coming back into play.
Yeah, I'm looking on my tablet now. Rule of 6 returns plus 2 households will be able to meet outdoors.
Yeah, whether this is going to spark cases or not, who knows? Who knows? It's probably what my personal opinion is of the government's announcement. Yes, it's all good and that, and it's providing us a clear outcome of what the government are thinking, but it's very case driven. Whether the cases can stay low for a long time is out. Who knows? Because
it's also
I have the feeling that it's going to be pushed back further. There's no way we're going to be able to open everything up by June the 21st. No chance.
Well, it'll also be a matter of common sense with the public. I know there's been cases of people being idiots, having parties and getting fines and that, but the end goal is that June 21st one where normal life should return, and that should be everyone's goal. So everyone does have to play their part in this. So common sense has to prevail. It does.
Common sense is the main thing here, really. It's whether the UK people can get it in the brains that we've got a roadmap ahead.
And to be fair, so far they haven't done that. They haven't done that so far.
Not at all, which is why it keeps mutating and mutating.
Yeah, that's been the problem so far, is that, like you say, this is going to rely on, because obviously the government can only set certain things. It's down to us as the public to follow it, and that has been the problem so far, is that the vast majority have followed it, but there's a small minority that are breaking the rules, having things like parties, or even just doing smaller things. Like the amount of people just who seem to have managed to pull a haircut out of somewhere, and for the people are stupid enough as well. Like as you say, there's a lack of common sense to break the rules anyway. But if you're then stupid enough to break the rules and then put it on social media everywhere, which is how the majority of people are getting caught, then you wonder why is that suddenly going to change just because it looks more realistic.
Joe Linton comes to mind, the Newcastle striker. He done it, didn't he? Yeah. He had a haircut, put the post on social media, and the barber was like, "What are you doing, mate?"
Got a lot of backlash for it, and rightly so.
100%, yeah.
I say it's just dealing with the public as well. The amount of people, when you see the police raid in these makeshift nightclubs people have made, they've been caught because one person's gone there one night and put 500 Instagram stories up about them being at a full-on party, which has then been passed on to the police, who have then tracked it down and worked out where the club is, and they busted it, and everyone's got fined.
Yeah, that story in the last couple of weeks that came out about the mechanic's garage that got turned into a underground nightclub called the COVID Arms, and the police used thermal imaging cameras, and they estimated about 150 people were in this nightclub. Like, what is the point?
Exactly.
What is the point? Just wait.
Stupid.
So the burden falls on us as well. There's only so much. Whatever you think about how the government has done things so far, the burden falls on us as well to listen to it. Whether you can think it's stupid but you can still follow it because ultimately it's going to help, even if it's not in the right way according to what you think. It's going to help eventually. And so we won't spend too long boring you on the same things. I'm sure that's all everybody's spoken about in the last couple of days about all these different steps and that. But as long as you follow them and don't go any further than these steps, so don't try and start step 3 when we're still on step 1. Or as long as you follow the rules properly, then hopefully we'll be on track. Because like Ben said at the start, it's ambitious but achievable, which is exactly what we said about the vaccine targets, and they've gone further than that.
Exactly, and the whole step is reopening new bits of society, and the next part of society to be opened up on April the 12th is retail. And I think this is a wise move, April the 12th, because it's after Easter, because a lot of people will want to be using that Easter holiday to just go shopping, basically. And I think that's a wise move by the government to open it up after Easter holidays, when people are back at school, back at work, and it allows it to be opened up more gradually. I think that's a wise move. But I need a haircut. As you can see here, this mop needs sorting out.
Yeah, it has grown since I last saw you, Ben. I mean, looking at my notes here, it says gyms will reopen for individuals. Classes won't open until the 17th of May. Barbers and hairdressers to be reopened. Pubs and restaurants to serve food and drink outdoors. Rule of 6 rules will apply, and Brits can go on a staycation with their own family in a self-catered property.
Yeah.
So a little trip to Cornwall. What are you saying? Right down by the beach. Boom.
Again, it's the gradual reopening of society, which is good to see. I mean, I've got a holiday booked in July to go to Weymouth, and I want to go on that holiday because I need a break.
Don't we all? Yeah.
We all need a break, but it's sensible. Again, it's whether people stick to the rules and whether we can get on holiday, because I think that's the aim for everyone. I think international travel is completely out the window for this year. I think it'd be an unwise move to open up air corridors.
Yeah, 100%.
It'd be unwise.
I'm still hoping. I have a stag do to try and get done. If I have to go to Butlins, then so be it. But I'd like to involve my family abroad. Thank you. I'm still having my fingers crossed on that one.
Yeah, but I think it'd be very ambitious opening up.
Ultimately, this roadmap is. Yeah. Well, this roadmap only applies to England. We can't control how things go in other countries.
I know.
We might be perfectly out of it by June, but Germany or Spain or everywhere might still be in the thick of it.
I'm all for air travel for vaccinated, citizens only. I know there's talk in the news, and there was something that I read earlier about a COVID passport.
Yeah.
Where if you there's a corridor where you can go on holiday if you're vaccinated and you're safe from the virus. So, and plus with they're doing it in ages right now. So my vaccine should be coming up in the next couple of months. So,
Well, Boris was against these vaccine passports at first, but like everything with the government, U-turns.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll be very safe with the vaccine. I mean, you're covered. You won't get the virus. So why not? Why should vaccinated people not be able to go on holiday? I mean, everyone's going to want to go on holiday after this year.
The EU is very much behind us in terms of their vaccinations. I mean, we've managed to vaccinate one in 3 adults at the minute. I mean, the EU are very much behind us. So
I mean, we have stated on the podcast beforehand the troubles in Italy, Germany about the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Exactly. It's whether they can get themselves sorted out so that the world can be slowly freed up and international travel can resume. But at the minute, who knows? The buzzword really for this episode is who really knows.
Yeah,
because no one knows yet until how the vaccine rollout plays out and how cases come down.
Yeah, obviously, like I said, we can't control what happens in other countries, can we?
No.
You can see Australia and New Zealand and that they've been fine for weeks, but they're still not going to fly over to. They're not going to. If they're allowed to, they're not going to come over to here, though, are they? Because we're in a worse state. So the same thing would then apply to us if we then. If Germany is still in the thick of it when we do get to the final step of this roadmap and we're done, then people aren't going to go flocking over to Germany even if they've had the vaccine if they're in a worse state.
No,
because obviously Germany are quite strict on their borders and stuff as well, so we might be limited with options, which is why I would say we're looking well past 21st of June for normal international travel.
100%.
But look, I'm looking forward to May's one. I really am.
I think May is the turning point, really. May is significantly opening up society, really. I mean, talk me through what's May, because I can't remember off the top of my head.
I've got it up here. It's pubs and restaurants will be allowed. Pubs and restaurants will be allowed customers indoors. Saunas and spas will be allowed to reopen. 10,000 fans will be in stadiums for sport and big events, and 2 households will be able to mix indoors overnight. Rule of 6 will have to be followed.
That's a big one.
Yeah,
that's a big one. That's a huge one.
That's the last step before normality.
It is.
That's a test. Look, this is pretty much everything. The only things left at this point. So rule of 6, social distancing, and things like nightclubs being shut. If you can if you survive this for a month, if you can survive like this for a month, you can go back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the rest of it. it says June 21st, no cap on the amount of the number of people allowed at weddings, and nightclubs will finally be reopened after staying shut since the first lockdown back in March last year. And we was only having this discussion the other night about nightclubs, to be fair, in the group chat, weren't we? I mean...
Yeah, I still think they'll struggle to get back, really. Especially while COVID's still around.
I don't think no one will want to go out, to be fair. I mean, we haven't...
Oh, 100% they will.
While COVID's still around, I don't think nightclubs are the safest place to be because there's a lot of social contact. It's really close together in tight spaces.
To be
it's
fair,
not really safe while COVID is still around and still kicking around.
Yeah, I mean that is the end result. So they expect like 99.999% of people to be vaccinated by the time that nightclubs are open. So, I mean, it's going to be like a corridor of uncertainty. Do you want to go out to a nightclub or don't you? But then again, most people will want to go out. But the one I'm looking forward to is the final day of the Premier League season will have fans.
It might not, though. I think the Premier League are thinking about that. There was a story today that broke that the Premier League may not resume for the final game of the season. There's plans for it. It's an unfair advantage, really.
Yeah. I would argue for the sake of if it's only 1 or 2 weeks, you're better off just extending it and then hoping you can then get back to basically full stadiums from September
because what they're trying to do is get fat. They was looking at trying to get fans in for the final game of the Premier League season as a test towards maybe allowing fans in for the Euros, because there's also talk England want to be the sole host of this tournament.
I think that will happen because
I think a lot of countries want to be, don't they?
Host it over about 12 countries. But in terms of the Premier League having fans in, I just don't think it will happen. Just for one game, it just won't happen because it's going to provide unfair advantages. I mean, for example, Fulham versus Newcastle is one of the final games of the season. Them two are probably going to be both scrapping for relegation. Fulham will have fans in at home. It's going to provide an unfair advantage, really.
When you put it like that, I understand that. Yeah. But yeah, restaurants and pubs will be allowed to eat indoors. That'll be a good one.
Yeah.
This is where I feel like
May is the turning point and the steps to really opening up society, which we all want.
And obviously, moving on to June is when I don't want to say normality because there's still going to be differences because we're still unclear what's going to happen. Do we still need to wear face masks all the time? Those sort of questions are yet to be answered. We won't know until June. But just going back to a university perspective, because obviously we are a student podcast, the 21st of June is also after courses end for university. So obviously students will be back at home, which then hopefully can move on into the following September, that things can have a normal year.
Yeah.
Plus also as well, obviously, they said all adults, including students, because obviously we are over 18, so we'll be vaccinated. Well, they've been offered, obviously, if you choose to take it, which hopefully the majority of people will, by the end of July, which obviously then also means that pretty much everybody, by the 21st of June, it will pretty much be everybody other than students left in terms of adults, effectively.
Yeah.
As well, which then means students can go home for the summer, get vaccinated over the first month, have a couple of normal months, and hopefully go back for a normal year from September. But obviously, there's lots of factors this will depend on, as we've already touched on earlier in the thing. But obviously, trying to focus on a university point of view again, we are looking at, if we're on track, September can be more of a normal year, especially which will be massive for the students who will be starting in September for their first year.
Yeah, me, because I'm doing my foundation year, and I've done quite a bit this year. But from what the standpoint, because I'm going into the same course as you two.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've not done any practical, that sucks. I feel for you guys, but
it can't be helped. But
no, I know, but like hopefully, I won't have the same problem in my first year.
We chose to come to university with that in mind, really.
Yeah.
We chose to accept our applications and come to university knowing full well that it's not going to be normal. But year one's not the most practical course for our course. Year 2 and 3 is where it seriously starts getting ramped up for practical elements on our journalism course.
Oh, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing then. By September, if it's normality and there's face-to-face lectures and everything is back to some normal university experience and everything's on schedule, you're going to love it then, aren't you?
I mean, the big thing for us is work experience, because places at the minute are just not accepting people. But hopefully, come September, opportunities will start to arise again.
Yeah, that's like things will pick up.
Jump back to my previous point as well. Like we were, I say it was only a few, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago on the podcast when we were moaning about, so it was tuition fees or whatever we were moaning about that week. But like we were saying, how students this year, like we had a bit of a choice. But how are they going to know? But if they might be set for a normal year, which is obviously massive for those who have applied and are sitting there questioning, like we were this time a year ago, what's going to happen? If they look set that they're going to have a normal year, that is massive for them. Obviously, we might have just missed out. That doesn't mean we don't want those in the year below us to move forward and have a normal year.
Yeah,
we're not going to be spiteful and say, "Oh, we suffered. Everyone else should suffer in their first year from now on." That's massive for them.
To be fair, I mean, it's only going to suck 1 year of our uni experience. I mean, obviously, the clubs and like the Ember Lounge, the Verve have been shut mainly this year, but then everything will start gradually reopening, and we can like experience those things just like the first years will do next year.
Yeah.
So, but no, this is a positive thing, and the one thing I took from this announcement yesterday was that the leader of the Labour Party was in full support of Boris Johnson's announcement for this roadmap. They are on board, because normally with announcements, obviously to Conservative Labour, they don't get necessarily agree on everything, but the fact that they've agreed on this and they are in full support for this to go ahead. That's where one thing I took from that in the House of Commons announcements and Prime Minister's questions over it yesterday.
So I have to give them credit as well. So we've given them a fair bit of stick over the last however many weeks we've been doing the podcast, but where we've given them praise is the vaccine, and then also this. Obviously, again, it then relies on us as the public to listen to what they say and make sure we hit these targets. But again, like we said it with the vaccines, they're ambitious but achievable targets. And look at what happened with the vaccine. When we call them ambitious, are they going to make it? They've made it with 2 months. They've made it with like a few weeks to spare. And then
they've done really well with the vaccine.
Potentially 2 months early as well for all adults. So
we've seen
we can say the same
Parliament
thing
come
here.
together.
Hopefully,
we've seen Parliament come together on this roadmap forward. Now it's time for the whole UK to come together to get to June, which we all want, and normality. Yeah,
the June 21st one is the end goal. That should be everyone's end goal. This has been a nonsense. This has been painful and depressing, and it got everyone down and that. But this is the road. Like the light is at the end of the tunnel now. This should be everyone's goal. Use your heads, people. Use your heads. This is it now. Like, if we all stick together and keep to the rules and keep to whatever they're saying, we'll have a normal life again, and everything will go back to normal.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And talking of heads, I think we need to wrap this up because I've got a headache. So, it's just a shorter episode this week for you guys, but it's informative as well. I say as per ever because we're never informative on this podcast.
No. We kept it short though. We didn't want to. I'm sure everybody's heard enough of the roadmap. I'm sure everybody understands it. So we didn't want to sit here and explain it to you for an hour when you were probably the 5th person to explain it to you already.
Exactly. But it does bring episode 12 to an end this week. Shorter episode, but we'll be back hopefully next week on schedule for more important news. Stay safe and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.